Aloha, it's CreativeNameToStandOut again with another battle report. This time I'm bringing you a 2,500 point game between my Dark Elves and an opponent's Lizardmen army. This will be the second game where we try out the Khaine magic rules, so just have that in your mind while you're watching it. And also 3 things I would like you to remember while you watch this also. 1, we'll be playing the interpretation that if you have a spell dispelled, it will count as failed when we determine if you can cast a spell over and over and over again. We're just going with that because we both believe that's popular opinion. We wouldn't try to argue that that's the definitive way that it's going to be ruled, but we just kind of go with what we think is popularly perceived. 2, last time I played Khaine Magic, we didn't use the mega spells that came from the book, but this time we will. So I will have access to Meteoric Ironclad, and my opponent will have access to Deadlock. Finally, my opponent is bringing a Slan who knows the high magic lore, and of course that comes with an attribute. And I know that some people have different opinions on how that's going to work. My opponent deferred to me in this case, asking me how I thought it would make sense for it to be ruled, and so I just came up with my own logical argument for it. Not that I'm going to defend it; it's just my line of reasoning for my opinion on it. But that all wizards get Lore Master. The Lore Master allows you to pick a lore and know all the spells from that lore. And so when the attribute from the high magic allows you to switch out a spell, I don't necessarily think it makes you a lore master from that lore, because you haven't chosen that lore in the beginning of the game. But you know, other people might think differently, and that's fine. But my opponent deferred to me. I told him what I thought. I told him that in the end that I didn't care how he played it. It's up to him. But he went ahead and went with my interpretation. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and just jump into the game. Starting on my opponent's left flank, we have 10 skinks and then a salamander. In the center we have first a 35 unit of Saurus Warriors with Gor-rak inside of it. Then he has his temple guard with a slan inside there. And then finally on the far right we have the smaller block of 30 Saurus Warriors. Moving on down the right, we also see that he has a unit of 10 skinks with a Tetto'eko attached. Here's a look at my board from the overview. And then we zoom in and we see that I have 5 Dark Riders with shields and crossbows. And in my center we have my chariot, 35 executioners, another chariot. Behind that will be a Dreadlord on a black dragon, 24 spearmen with a BSB. Then we have a level 4 by herself, and then 40 dread spears with a level 1. And then finally on the far right of my flank we have some chameleon skinks camping. Then we go into Vanguard moves. Tetto'eko allows him to push up the salamander over here, and this block of warriors on the other side. My opponent wins the roll-off to see who gets to go first, and he starts moving his skirmishes around. One of his maneuvers brings him through the river here, and it ends up being a river of light, and it casts banishment on the unit that Tetto'eko's in, so he loses about half of them, but they don't break. Otherwise, he keeps everything pretty much where it is, and he jumps into the magic phase. As you're looking over these slides, you'll notice that occasionally I've included a number in parentheses. That number represents the amount of dice I could have used in the phase, but I decided to use less. If I don't include that number, that means you're seeing me using the max amount of dice I rolled up in a phase. So that's just for your added benefit, so you can analyze the magic phase a little bit more. Otherwise, in this particular magic phase, the biggest thing of note was my opponent got off Deadlock, which locked down here my level 4, and that made my turn difficult. In the shooting phase, he kills off my Dark Riders from a combination of the salamander and those skinks. And then on the other far right side, he uses the chameleon skinks to inflict some minor casualties in that large unit of dread spears. Otherwise, I think these are movement pictures I forgot to post before the magic phase. And then we jump into Dark Elf turn 1. Now, one of the early threats that I'm really worried about is that salamander. I stopped to walk between worlds in his magic phase because that was one of my biggest concerns, and now I really want to take that out of the game. So I move everything up. I declared 1 charge. That's with my chariot at that salamander. He flees, and then I just kind of move everything up to get in a better position for later in the game. Alright, so with my level 1 pretty much outclassed by the slan, I need to come up with a different tactic here. And my opponent's probably anticipating that I'm going to try to throw out some fireballs and stuff. So if I start out with some defensive spells, he probably will be less inclined to stop them because he'll probably think I'm just trying to bleed dice from him. And so I do that, and it ends up working really well until I irresistibly cast the second sword. and that knocks my level 1 to a level 0, and I no longer have the lower fire access. But I do get off 3 spells, and this will either work as a deterrent to keep him from charging me, or at least help me out a whole bunch if he does. Here's an overview of the board. Going to Lizardmen turn 2. My opponent's not going to move a lot, but he's going to move everything. His skinks are going to try to march, but they're going to fail. He still gets out of my charge arc, though. The Saurus Warriors will do the electric slide over to the right. These chameleon skinks have the net of Ammontok on them, that's right, because when they try to move, they fail their strength test, and they have 6 of their chameleons die. And then otherwise, everything else does move, but it kind of just scoots back a little bit. So here we go into Lizardmen turn 2, and there's a pretty big difference between us and our dice. The 2 spells I'm going to focus on, though, will be Comet and Walk Between Worlds. I'll take my chances with the others. He rolls really high with Comet, so I'm forced to use the Dispel Scroll. I really think Dispel Scrolls are even more important now in this version of Magic. I do stop Walk Between Worlds. I get lucky, he only gets 1 dice for Fiery Convocation, and I realize it's actually a pretty good thing that dice are random, because with a lore like High Magic and Heavens combined, there's just like so many spells that are just game changing that to get off like 3 of them in a turn would be so bad. But otherwise, moving on, in the shooting phase he puts a wound or 2 on my chariot, and that's about it. We jump into Dark Elf turn 2. I declare a charge with both my Black Dragon and the chariot. The chariot needed a 9, the Black Dragon I think needed like a 5, and of course the chariot goes in there unsupported, so it's good as dead. But I realize that in my back pocket I have a nifty little spell called Meteoric Ironclad, and I might as well try to get it off. So that's the first spell I try to cast. I only get 2 dice, I need an 11, but I get it off anyways, and he can't stop it. It's beautiful. Then I go for some defensive spells. My opponent's saving his dice for more offensive things. So I protect both my Executioners and my Spearmen with the Glittering Scales. I fail on my next spell. He stops my first offensive spell. I was trying to give this to the chariot. And then I go for a series of Plague of Rust, which my opponent just can't stop, either because he can't roll high enough, or I get 1 off irresistibly. But he finally stops it, and his Temple Guard are now down -2 on their armor save permanently. So that chariot's in a pretty sweet position. Hopefully it can kill enough and stick around. Actually, this is the last part of the turn, so we go ahead and do the combat, and as you can see, I win pretty easily. He's at -2 armor save thanks to the 2 Plague of Rust. I'm strength 5, so if I wound him, he is dead. He's just not able to wound me at all. He's frenzied up. He does 9 wounds, but I have a 2+ ward save. He doesn't do a single wound. He would have killed this twice over otherwise. And so he sticks it around, though, because he is steadfast, and we go into Lizardmen turn 3. He sees an opportunity here to maybe beat my Dreadlord through combat res alone. I think that's 3 ranks, a banner, a charge, and a flank, so that's up by 6. So he takes this charge, and I think it's a good choice. Things could go bad if I roll pretty poorly. Otherwise, he moves his skinks around, as you can see here, and then we jump in the magic phase. My opponent starts off his magic phase by casting Drain Magic on the Temple Guard. This is the only thing I have going for me, except for the 2+ ward save, of course. So I stop that. Then my opponent realizes he should have cast Deadlock first, he says. So he goes ahead and casts it, and darn it, I'm stuck. I'm screwed over next turn. Then he goes on a series of 1 dicing spells he doesn't have a chance to get off. And this makes me appreciate the randomness, because if he would have got Deadlock and Tempest, and then Fiery Convocation, and then Comet, oh my god, it just wouldn't be fair. So I'm kind of appreciating the randomness of this magic phase. Then we go into combat. I stick around again. He doesn't do any wounds to me. I don't do as many wounds back to him, though. So I do lose combat, but I stick. So that's real good. And the other combat between the Dreadlord and his Lizardmen, I just go to town on this guy. I think I roll up 10 attacks with the Hydra Blade, and I just roll really hot, and I kill a ton. He's steadfast, of course, and sticks around. So here's an overview of Dark Elf turn 3. I want to get these Executioners in combat with that block of Saurus, but if I do make it there and he kills off that chariot, he'll have an easy flank charge. So I reform to go wide into Horde, and then we jump into my magic phase. But then we realize it's deadlocked, so I can't do anything. We go straight into combat. I kill all but 1 of these skinks, and of course, they roll double 1s. He forgot he gets a 3rd dice, and he gets double 1s. Anyways, we move on with the Dreadlord fighting the Saurus Warriors. I kill some more of these guys. I win combat, of course. And then we go into the combat with the chariot, and would you believe it? I'm still there. He does 3 wounds to me. I kill 4 of his Saurus Warriors. I lose, but with my general there with leadership 10, I stick around. So here we go into Lizardmen turn 4. So apparently, I think it looks like Gor-rak gets tired of this chariot holding up the Temple Guard unit, so he charges in. The skinks move around behind the executioners to be annoying. And then finally, the last fresh block of warriors makes their advance. In the Lizardmen magic phase in turn 4, it looks like it's going to be pretty tame. Unfortunately, I probably should have took this as an omen of something pretty bad happening to my army this turn. And sure enough, he goes for Fiery Convocation with only 2 dice and gets it off irresistibly. He's going to target my executioners, and I'm going to lose a third of them. And now I'm going to have to waste dice. Hopefully, I can get enough to dispel this spell. In the shooting phase, the skinks kill off just 2 of the executioners, and we go straight into combat. And we have the chariot finally dying to Gor-rak. But I mean, look at that Temple Guard unit. I just rolled out of my mind with that chariot. That miscast helped out too, and there's only 4 left. We go in the rest of the other combats. The Black Dragon Dreadlord kill off a bunch of these Saurus Warriors, but they're cold-blooded and they stick around. So here we go into Dark Elf turn 4. It's been a really bloody battle. Not a lot of points been scored yet, though. But things are coming to an end here, so I expect those point totals to start shooting up. I declare a charge with my Dread Spears into this combat with the dragon. It's really close. We have to dice it off to see if I'm in the flank or in the front. I end up being in the front, and I just can't make that, so I fail charge there. We then send the executioners into the Saurus Warriors. I figure this is a fight I'm not going to be able to avoid right now, and if I'm going to lose the executioners to Fiery Convocation, I might as well do as much damage as I can before I lose them all. So I send them in there. I support it with a chariot, so I expect to win maybe the first round of combat. Maybe I'll get lucky and they'll break, and then after that we'll see the movement and we jump into the magic phase. So we go into Dark Elf turn 4, and I've never really thought about it till this game, but some of those remaining play spells are a lot more powerful now that you have to randomize how many dice you can use to dispel some spell. So something like Fiery Convocation is really terrifying now because you're not guaranteed to get rid of it once it goes off. And I get even more scared when I go for Transmutation of Lead and get it off irresistibly on this unit of Saurus Warriors my executioners are fighting. Luckily, it didn't end my magic phase, and I did get enough dice to get off to dispel a Fiery Convocation. And after combat, you can see here, I kill a ton of Saurus Warriors, but they do stick. We go to the last combat, which is the Dreadlord, and he finishes off the last of those Saurus Warriors. And this is what Lizardmen turn 4 looks like from overhead. In Lizardmen turn 5, we have the Temple Guard charge in against the Executioners, assisting the Source block. And what you see here is not the Winds of Magic, it's my opponent's channeling dice. He gets all 4 dice channels. And that's going to lead to a 20 to 8 dice difference. That's 12. I have no chance. I stopped Drain Magic, and I figure after that I'm done. He's probably going to win after this. Luckily, it balances itself out because he goes for Comet. He gets it off irresistibly. He ends up losing 6 dice, and yeah, it's a thankful relief from there because that was about to be game. In the shooting phase, we see 2 of my warriors die to some chameleon shots, and then my sorceress dies also. She had a 2nd wound on her from another miscast that you saw in, I think, of the last magic phase. So getting 1 wound through, even though I have a 3+ ward save, isn't going to be too hard. Probably pretty dumb of me. Probably should have put her in a unit, but I wasn't thinking. Then we go straight into combat, and he kind of whiffs here. He lets the Ego Quango come out, and he kills off 3 of my executioners. But otherwise, he kind of whiffs. I kill a bunch of his Saurus Warriors. I think I still lose, I think maybe by 2 or 3. But I do pass my leadership check, and I stick it out. So we go into Dark Elf turn 5, and things are looking very iffy for me. I have no magic phase now, basically. But luckily, the game's almost over, and his slan's in striking distance. So that's what I do. I declare a charge with my Dreadlord into the slan. I'm going to offer a challenge. He's not going to be able to refuse it, and we're going to be stuck until I kill him. Other than that, we go to my magic phase just to see if the comet comes down, and it does, and it kills off just his chameleons. It doesn't even reach anything else but the chameleons. So this is what the board looks like at the beginning of combat, and then we end up looking like this after combat. So this was actually a weird combat right here. Originally this was just one giant combat with my executioners versus the 2 blocks. And it looked like I just kind of bookend the main combat with a dragon and a chariot. But as the combat evolved, it ended up looking like the executioner unit was kind of a bridge between the 2 combats. So we have this situation here where this was one giant combat, and now they're definitely not one giant combat. So for this situation, we kind of just treat it as one giant combat, and and so when I took leadership tests, we counted all the combat resolution, which made my chariot test on a 4 rather than on snake eyes, because I did a couple wounds. Had we treated it differently, then the chariot wouldn't benefit from any of the wounds or the charge from the dragon, but we weren't sure how to resolve that. So I'm not sure if we did it correctly. Please let me know if we did it wrong. This is what it looks like at the end. And at this point, there are now 2 separate combats. The challenge of the black dragon against the Slan, and whatever's left against my chariot. In my opponent's last turn, he charges Gor-rak into the side of my black dragon. He, of course, won't be able to contribute any attacks, but with a charge and a flank, and if he continues to roll pretty well on his ward saves, he might just beat me through combat res and break me that way. The rest of the table kind of shuffles around, getting to better positions to shoot, and we jump into the magic phase. So once again, unfortunately, the Winds of Magic deliver another massive difference in dice pools between me and my opponent. And this problem is compounded by the fact that I don't have a level 4. So my opponent is going to have a good chance to have free reign. I'm looking only to stop a couple spells. Those spells that will give my opponent his wounds back on his Slan, because I'm afraid I won't kill him. And so I stop Apotheosis and I stop Regrowth. And then I just stop Ice Shard Blizzard because I can, and I don't want that combat to go against me. After that, my opponent pretty much has free reign. He gets off a lot of spells. He kills quite a few elves, but he doesn't take out any whole units. So I'm not really going to report on where all those spells went, because this is the last turn and it doesn't really matter. In this picture, you can see my last 4 elves from the BSB's bodyguard. It was the target of the Soul Quenches, the Fiery Convocation, Skink Blowpipes, and the Salamander's Breath. And despite all that attention, they're still there. And I still have my points, but it was getting really worrisome. I do get a 4+ ward save against the spells, but still all the attention, killed so many. So we go into combat, and I'm able to finally kill that Slan. It did come down to the Thunder Stomp, and I rolled a 1 for the Thunder Stomp, and I wounded him, and so it's 50-50, and he fails it, and that's a perfect. So I end up winning this combat. Gor-rak is, of course, stubborn. He sticks, and we go into Dark Elf turn 6. Oh yeah, and the chariot combat with the Saurus block, somehow I'm going to live through the last combat and this combat. He's just not able to wound my chariot, and I'm going to pass my leadership test because I'm pretty sure I lose both combats just by the combat res. So that leaves us only with the Dreadlord versus Gor-rak. We go into a challenge just because it's appropriate. And my Dreadlord swings at Gor-rak. The hide of that dinosaur is just too tough. I can't wound him. He kills my Dreadlord in return, and then my Black Dragon just swallows Gor-rak whole, and that's the game. So let's take a look at the final score. And despite the fact that he got that extra 100 points for killing off my general there, it just wasn't enough. The Slan, when he went down, he's both the BSB and the general, and he's inherently expensive. There was just so many points going into my column there, it just wasn't enough. To come back into it. So the Dark Elves do walk off with a win here, and let's talk about the Khaine Magic phase now. Alright, so this is the second time I played Khaine Magic, and I have to say the second time around it was a lot more fun. I think I was just too negative going into it the first game. Plus I hadn't slept a lot that day, so I was already kind of like in a bad mood about it. But as I played it the first time around, I just hated it. I wanted to quit immediately. This time around, we incorporated all the rules this time, including the giant, the world's ending spells. And it was just a lot of fun. I mean, I realized as I was playing it that I was actually laughing and having fun with it. When my wizard got deadlocked, it wasn't like, I hate this game and kick the table over. It was kind of like, that's funny that's a spell. That's kind of cool. And here, next time I'll get off the 2+ ward save and hold up your block forever. And so we both got to experience the new giant spells. When you look at the magic phases, I mean, as you're playing the game, I know that sometimes you're feeling like, man, I keep on rolling ones for Fiery Convocation or this other key spell. But then since I'm recording them all, and you look over it, you realize, well, even though I'm not getting off Fiery Convocation in this turn, I am getting off Deadlock. I don't get off Deadlock in this turn. I get off 3 Tempests and a Fiery Convocation. So, I mean, I don't know. It kind of works out. Like one time I got, the 2+ ward save on 2 dice, but I couldn't get Transmutational Lead when I really needed it at one point. And then I did get it off irresistibly. So, it's all over the place. And there's some sort of like balance in the chaos of it. So, I feel like you can appreciate that. The other criticism I had about this new system was that I felt like it was making the game more tedious, and I'm going to walk that back some. I don't feel like that's a fair criticism. The game, of course, is more tedious for myself because I'm a YouTube battle reporter and I'm submitting battle reports and I'm keeping track of things that are going on, and particularly on my channel, the Magic phase. So of course it's going to seem like harder work because it is. But that hard work is not the fault of the new Magic system. That's the fault of my own approach to the hobby. So I'm going to take that back. This new system, I'm not going to say is going to be tedious. I think the game will be longer. I don't think it's going to be longer to a fault. I'm sure we'll notice that the games are longer, but I don't think it necessarily is something that I would hold against the system. So yeah, I wouldn't hold it against the new Magic system. I just don't prefer it, I guess. I like the old system still, but I can get used to it. It's not something I'm going to be against to play in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the second game. I appreciate everybody's likes, comments, and subscriptions. And I'll have another, I think, 2 battle reports before the year's up, both of which will not be the Khaine system. Thanks again for everybody watching, and I'll see you later.